So I want to start with a little of my background. Um, I emigrated from Italy, from a very small village in Italy when I was 7. At that time in 1954, there was a quota system for immigrants, not for all immigrants, just us immigrants from the southern part of Europe, us darker ones with the olive skin, and Greeks, Italians, Spanish, Portuguese. Uh, don't know why, don't care, but there was. Uh, you had to have a job. You had to be sponsored by someone here. You had to have a job waiting for you in a certain critical industry, and you had to have a house. You could not come and just lay around or sleep on the street, whatever. And so we had relatives that arranged that for us. And my father brought us here when he was 34, and he went to work at the job that was opened up for him in a machine shop. Um, he stopped his education at age 6, at sixth grade at age 12, because when he had to go and be a breadwinner for the rest of his family, even though he was 12, he ended up going in the war, almost died. The rest of the company died, was a prisoner of war in North Africa for 2 years before he came here. So all he knew was work and war all his life. Uh, I got that same instinct in me that was bequeathed to me, a great thing from my father. My first job was when I was 13, and I was removing lint from between ladies' feet. And I don't mean that in any sexual way. That's what was my job. They sent me to a sewing machine shop and gave me a little stupid broom. They didn't want these poor immigrant Italian ladies to stop making pockets for pants and dresses. So while they were still making those little pockets, I had to go in between their feet and their legs and clean out all the lint that these sewing machines made. And the guy refused to pay me. I wouldn't leave when I was 13. He opened up the soda machine, took out all the coins, and threw them at me. Needless to say, I lasted in that job maybe 1 week. Uh, and when I was growing up, I worked at my father's gas station on weekends and summers, just pumping gas. At that time, the most expensive gas was 19 cents per gallon. And if you had $5, that means you had a Cadillac because you got a full tank and you were rich. I worked for 2 years at a pizza place in my junior and senior year in high school, making hundreds upon hundreds of pizza. When I went to college, I worked at my father's liquor store, mostly during the holidays, because I was good at the cash register and I could speak English. So it helped them get the people out. One summer, I worked at construction, lifting 16-pound bricks to my bricklayers. I delivered telephone books. I sold pots and pans. I was a good humor ice cream man, and I worked nights at a post office, all in the same summer, because I wanted to get married, and you know how it is. So, and then I also went into cold calling, which depressed me. Somewhere in my late 20s, I was called to the ministry. I left a great career at A&P. I was the youngest and highest paid buyer. At that time, A&P was 3,500 stores. And I left all that and learned what starvation was like. I lost all my money, or I started from nothing 4 times, once out of college, once when I went into the ministry, another time when I got divorced, and another time where a charlatan defrauded us of all our money some 10 or 15 years ago. So somewhere in there, I prayed to the Lord to teach me about money. So I said, well, to learn about money, I'll go into the insurance business. I'll go into the investment business. And I got a CLU, Chartered Life Underwriter, which is a designation for life and health insurance. And then I got a CFP, which is the highest designation, Certified Financial Planner in financial planning. And I thought I knew about money, but I did not. I knew how to sell life insurance policies. I knew how to put together a retirement plan for someone, but I really did not understand how wealth was made. Um, and I didn't have anyone to tell me. My father had a poor mentality. I didn't know anyone else in my life. Certainly, the college professors knew nothing about making money. So I didn't really learn what I am about to tell you until I was about 60. I'm glad I did, but for me, it's way too late. So what I want to do is I want to start with a little of my background. Um, I emigrated from Italy, from a very small village in Italy when I was 7. At that time in 1954, there was a quota system for immigrants, not for all immigrants, just us immigrants from the southern part of Europe, us darker ones with the olive skin, and Greeks, Italians, Spanish, Portuguese. Uh, don't know why, don't care, but there was. Uh, you had to have a job. You had to be sponsored by someone here. You had to have a job waiting for you in a certain critical industry, and you had to have a house. You could not come and just lay around or sleep on the street, whatever. And so we had relatives that arranged that for us. And my father brought us here when he was 34, and he went to work at the job that was opened up for him in a machine shop. Um, he stopped his education at age 6, at sixth grade at age 12, because when he had to go and be a breadwinner for the rest of his family, even though he was 12, he ended up going in the war, almost died. The rest of the company died, was a prisoner of war in North Africa for 2 years before he came here. So all he knew was work and war all his life. Um, I got that same instinct in me that was bequeathed to me, a great thing from my father. My first job was when I was 13, and I was removing lint from between ladies' feet. And I don't mean that in any sexual way. That's what was my job. They sent me to a sewing machine shop and gave me a little stupid broom. They didn't want these poor immigrant Italian ladies to stop making pockets for pants and dresses. So while they were still making those little pockets, I had to go in between their feet and their legs and clean out all the lint that these sewing machines made. And the guy refused to pay me. I wouldn't leave when I was 13. He opened up the soda machine, took out all the coins, and threw them at me. Needless to say, I lasted in that job maybe 1 week. Uh, and when I was growing up, I worked at my father's gas station on weekends and summers, just pumping gas. At that time, the most expensive gas was 19 cents per gallon. And if you had $5, that means you had a Cadillac because you got a full tank and you were rich. I worked for 2 years at a pizza place in my junior and senior year in high school, making hundreds upon hundreds of pizza. When I went to college, I worked at my father's liquor store, mostly during the holidays, because I was good at the cash register and I could speak English. So It helped them get the people out. One summer, I worked at construction, lifting 16-pound bricks to my bricklayers. I delivered telephone books. I sold pots and pans. I was a good humor ice cream man, and I worked nights at a post office, all in the same summer, because I wanted to get married, and you know how it is. So, and then I also went into cold calling, which depressed me. Somewhere in my late 20s, I was called to the ministry. I left a great career at A&P. I was the youngest and highest paid buyer. At that time, A&P was 3,500 stores. And I left all that and learned what starvation was like. I lost all my money, or I started from nothing 4 times, once out of college, once when I went into the ministry, another time when I got divorced, and another time where a charlatan defrauded us of all our money some 10 or 15 years ago. So somewhere in there, I prayed to the Lord to teach me about money. So I said, well, to learn about money, I'll go into the insurance business. I'll go into the investment business. And I got a CLU, Chartered Life Underwriter, which is a designation for life and health insurance. And then I got a CFP, which is the highest designation, Certified Financial Planner in financial planning. And I thought I knew about money, but I did not. I knew how to sell life insurance policies. I knew how to put together a retirement plan for someone, but I really did not understand how wealth was made. Um, and I didn't have anyone to tell me. My father had a poor mentality. I didn't know anyone else in my life. Certainly, the college professors knew nothing about making money. So I didn't really learn what I am about to tell you until I was about 60. I'm glad I did, but for me, it's way too late. So what I want to do is I want to take, um, can you put up, let's see, the first slide? Um, okay, that's a title. The next one, please. Yes, I'm going to compare 12 factors from the point of view of a poverty mentality and from the point of view of a wealth mentality. I don't want to use the word rich. If I do, I'm sorry, because you can inherit money and still be a jerk. But I want to talk about a wealth mentality. That is someone who knows how to create wealth, not someone who just wins the lottery or is inherited. So the first thing I want to compare is uh, what is financial security? What is it to you? How do you define financial security? That's the first factor. If you don't know how to define financial security, how will you ever reach it? So then I want to talk about the perspective of how do wealthy people look at money as opposed to people with a poverty mentality? That's a big one. Another big one is how do wealthy people look at time? What does time mean to them? What does time mean to people with a poverty mentality? You would think that the factor about work is the same for everyone. It's not. It's not. How does a wealthy man look at authority? And how does a poor man look at authority? What does a poor man consider an asset to be, as opposed to what does a wealthy man consider an asset to be? And the last six, I need the next slide.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. Okay. and these are the last six. What does it mean to be retired? What does it mean for a poor man to be retired? What does it mean for someone with a wealth perspective? You would think that everyone would think the same. They don't. We're going to find out about risk. Oh, last thing I want to do is lose all my money. Oh, I don't want to do that, boy. That's pretty risky. We're going to find out, how do different people view risk? How do different people view education? Something very dear to my heart because of my father's point of view. What value is there in planning? Who does it and who doesn't do it? What does a poor man do with pleasure? How does he handle pleasure? How does a wealthy man deal with pleasure? I hear someone speaking in the background, so someone's not muted.
Mom.
And I still hear them. Okay, so, and lastly, what does a poor man think about getting a purpose in life as opposed to a man with a wealthy perspective? So let's go through them one by one. Uh, I want to start with how I really started this. I started this maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20. I lose track of time. When I was invited by a history teacher at Westbury High School to come to his senior class to talk to them about money and about what I do. At that point, I was a retirement planner for people in the education system. And this history teacher was the chairman of the teachers union. And he said, come on in and talk to them about what you do. So I went to them and I said, can you please raise your hands and tell me what financial security is to you? And I said, there's no right or wrong answer. Just tell me what it is. And they just raised their hand. Oh, financial security to me is being able to buy a red Corvette. Okay. Oh, financial security to me is being able to go on any vacation I want. Okay. Financial security to me is being able to retire without worries. You know, okay. You know, financial security to me means being able to buy a house. And, most of these, the Corvette, the guy's 18, you got to cut him some slack. What's he know? But for most of these are good answers. Um, and then I told him what I felt financial security was. And I told him financial security to me is the ability to say no to anyone I want. And I said, you have no idea how many compromises you're going to have to make with people who are going to give you trouble in your life. And you'll have to go along because you can't afford to lose your income. As soon as I said that, this sweet teacher who was leaning on the wall almost began to slink down the wall because she understood exactly she had to kiss up to the principal. She had to kiss up to the union president. She had to kiss up to all these students, most especially the parents of their darling little kids. So when I said that financial security was the ability to say no or the ability to deal with whoever you want anytime you want, it hit her in the heart. It didn't hit the kids yet because they had not entered the career world of compromise in order to hit your job. A good question is when you go to work, if you knew you didn't need your salary, what would change in your life? If you didn't need your salary, who would you say no to? Now, some of you are not in the workplace. You may not be able to relate to this. Some of you are retired and you may not be able to relate to this. but one day you will relate to it. What would you do if money was not an issue? Would you still put up with some of the stuff you do? Maybe you would, but it'd be for a different reason. Let's go to the next one. The poor man looks at money almost 100% from what it could buy him. That's why when I asked the question, the guy said the red Corvette, the house. And of course, money is made to buy things. It's not that it's wrong. It's just that it's incomplete. The wealthy man is a completely different attitude. To him, money is the ability to control his choices. A wealthy man, that's what he wants to do. He will work beyond just mere being able to buy stuff to the point where it will control his choice, and nobody will be able to dictate to him what he can do with his efforts and his time. It's a completely different perspective. Let's go to the next slide. I think this is this the next slide?
Yeah,
Okay, I think I covered that.
yeah. So let me go to the next one.
Yeah, okay. This is one of the most important themes that in order to be able to control your life, financial security is making a transition from earned income to unearned income. Earned income is money that you have to put your time and effort to in order to get a salary or that income. Unearned income is money or income that comes without any effort on your part and without any time. The wealthy mentality wants to get to unearned income. More importantly, the wealthy mentality wants to get to unearned income on his schedule and his time and not on someone else's time. And we'll discuss that more in a minute. So, what I mean to say is, if you're a teacher, eventually, if you just keep your nose clean, you're going to be on unearned income. It's called Social Security, it's called a pension, but you're not going to do it on your time. You're not going to do it on your time. You're going to do it on their time under their conditions. But a pension is a form of unearned income because there's nothing you have to do to get it as a Social Security. Let's go to the next slide. Another very important, another very important concept. A poor mentality thinks that it takes time to make money. You need time to make money. You got to go to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 6, no matter what your schedule is. You know, the early bird gets the worm. We have it. We have it in our, you know, if you're not early, you're late. Everything that all our responsible parents and teachers and professors and pastors tell us. That is a poor mentality. The wealthy mentality says, no, money makes time. Money expands time. So I want to use my money to make more time so I can have more choices. I lived through two very impressive stories that I want to share with you about this point. Some 20 or 25 years ago, Mayor Bloomberg was mayor of New York City. And on Friday at 5 o'clock, he used to take a helicopter from Gracie Mansion to an airport in northern New Jersey. if I remember, something like Peterborough or something like that. He used to get on his private jet and fly to his home in Hawaii. Um, when he got on his jet, continued his work, continued his dinner, continued his conversations. He slept. He got to Hawaii Saturday morning, bright and early, had a full day on Saturday, a full day on Sunday. On Sunday night, he got back in his plane, once again slept, did what he wanted to, and by 9 o'clock on Monday morning, he was back at his desk in Gracie Mansion. All the newspapers hated this. They said, "Oh, how dare you go out of the city? What if there's an emergency?" And he said, "I'm just a phone call away. I've trained my assistants. I'm still in control." And he realized that they were just envious. Now, he was a multi-billionaire, but I will use the extreme to show that money made time for him. Another example, I was the toy buyer for two supermarkets at one point. So I used to go to Toy Fair, which is around 20th Street in Manhattan. And I don't remember that it was a big toy company, 20-story building. It was Hasbro or Mattel, one of these big companies. And the president and owner on Friday night used to go to the 20th floor where they had a helipad, and he used to take a helicopter to his home in the Hamptons, fly over all us blue collar people stuck on Montauk Highway and Sunrise Highway, trying to eke our way home, never mind going to Montauk. He would get there by 6 or 7 o'clock on Friday, relax, have his time, spend all day Friday, Saturday night, Sunday. Well, all the bananas like me, then we get up at 3 a.m. on Monday morning to miss all the traffic so we could all get back into Manhattan. This guy would get on this helicopter at 8 o'clock on Monday morning and be at his desk at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Once again, I'm using an extreme, but wealthy people know that money makes time. But you don't have to be wealthy to understand the concept because the concept is the most important part. Okay? You don't need all that money. If you didn't have your calculator, how long would it take you to do your checkbook? If you didn't have the computer, how long would it take you? Remember the good old days of the Dewey Decimal System where if you wanted to know something, you had to go to the library? But now you spent money to get your laptop, and look at all the time it's saving you. Look at where you can go with your car. What if you had to get to church on a horse and buggy? Would you really live in Rocky Point or Queens? No, you wouldn't. You'd either sleep over at someplace in Amityville or you'd be going to another church because you bought a car with money and it made you time. And the same could be said at microwave ovens. How'd you like to rub two sticks and prepare dinner or spend 6 hours doing your laundry on a washboard the way my mom used to do in Italy? I have a dream that I want a jet. I may not get it, but it's still my dream. Somebody prophesied that someone would give me a jet. It's all right with me. But even if I could afford to buy a jet, I couldn't afford to keep it. So somewhere along the line, it has to be a gift. I don't want it to be wealthy. I want it to save time because enough money shrinks distances and expands time. Wealthy people know this, that money shrinks distances and expands time. And I have people who are dear to me and I love all around the world. And I don't want to see my daughter once a year and my friends in the Caribbean once every 6 months or my family in Italy once every 5 years. You're the same way. I'm talking about a principle here about the way wealthy people think. that you don't just need time to make money. You have to make money so that you can shrink distances and expand time. Why? So you can do more things and have more choices. What things? We'll get into that in a minute. Let's go to work. People with a poverty mentality think that work is for making money. And of course, work is for making money. But people with a wealth mentality think that work is for creating freedom. It's way beyond buying things. It's way beyond making money. Their mind is on creating freedom. Now, maybe they might be wealthy bums and they're creating freedom so they could get stoned all day. That's another question. But first, you got to get to freedom. You got to get to freedom. And that's what financial security is for. It's for freedom. Hard work is one factor to wealth. Being a smart worker is also a great factor to wealth. But without the wealth perspective, you can be educated, you can work hard, you can be intelligent, and you can still die poor. I've seen it, and so will you. You have to add the wealth perspective to hard work, to education, to intelligence in order to get financial security. Maybe some of us have budgets. I hope you do. I hope you have a budget. But when you set your budget priorities from your salaries, do you set aside money for the important things in your life? You set aside money for food. You set aside money for shelter. You set aside money for utilities, for a car. Oh, I hope you set aside money for tithing. You set aside money for your education or maybe your children's. But do you include in all those little buckets that you set aside money in your budget? Do you include a freedom bucket? I bet you don't. I bet you don't. Or do you wait until there's leftovers from all the other stuff? I bet there's never going to be leftovers. I've had thousands of clients in my 30 somewhat years of financial planning. I've had clients that have extra money, though they only make $3,000 to $5,000 a month, and they have extra money. And I've had clients that make over $400,000 a year and are calling me to find out how in the world they keep on running out of money and how could they make their money work harder. They both believe they're doing the right thing. So if you believe in these concepts, especially if you're young, I know at a certain point, as I said today at church, the closer you get to the moon, the less maneuvers you can make because you're so close. And I get that. We don't live forever. But when you're young, if you let the urgent become the enemy of what's important and you forget your freedom bucket, well, then you have a poor mentality and you only have yourself to blame for it. Let's look at the, oh yes, that's a good example of that. There's that freedom bucket. Most of the time it's actually last. That's a little bit generous that it's third from last. Most of the times it should be right after education. But that's my point. Hopefully, if you're a Christian, you're tithing, and then comes your house, your food, your utilities, your clothing, your entertainment, your pleasure. Got nothing against any of these. Got nothing against gifts. We have 20 grandchildren, and my wife would forget my name before she would forget to send a gift to one of our grandchildren. I get that. Okay. But where's your freedom bucket? Let's go to the next slide. How do wealth mentality and a poor mentality think about authority? I want to take a little time with this. Um, I call it the patriarchal mindset. I used to be a Catholic, and during my younger years, my Protestant friends used to say, "How can you Catholics believe everything the Pope tells you? How can you let one man be the fountain of all truth for you? You know, you guys are just under the thumb of one person." Then, as I became a Protestant, I realized that the only thing that changed was that Protestants had maybe their own individual pope, their favorite pastor, their favorite guy on the radio, their favorite TV announcer, whatever. But basically, they believed in the patriarchal system every bit as much as Catholics, but they didn't know it. They gave so much of their important decisions to Big Daddy. Big Daddy could be the corporation, Big Daddy could be the government. Big Daddy sold them the myth of retirement. Retirement's a myth, but we've been sold on it because the authorities in our lives said we had to do that. Who has the right to tell a wealthy man when he should retire? The answer is no one. But people, the poor mentality with a patriarchal mindset, think that that right belongs to someone else. I can retire when my company gives me my pension. I can retire when I get Social Security. I can retire when the union tells me I can. Oh, yeah? Well, especially if you're young. I know if you're in your last few years, as I said, you're close to the moon, you got very little maneuverability. But if you're young and you go into that with that mindset, that's a poverty mentality. Don't let Big Daddy, big government, big corporation sell you on that. So many of my clients, and as I said, I've had thousands, come to me and said they cannot save money because they need every dollar, they need every penny. They can't even tithe because they fall behind in their debt, and they certainly can't afford to invest. And all of a sudden, the government raises their taxes. And by some magic wand, these people adjust to the new scenario and they live with it. So when Big Daddy from the outside tells them, hey, this is what you need to work with, somehow they do. But when they have to do it on their own, somehow they convince themselves that they can't. So many of my clients love to get money back from the IRS. Oh, we love that. Oh, we look forward to it every single tax season. That's how we do our vacations. They don't know that when they get money from the IRS, it's because they overpaid. And the IRS is only giving them their own money back with no interest. What's worse is that some of them do know it. And they're so afraid of their lack of will that they use their IRS to save, even though they're only getting back their own money because they're afraid without it, if they had it in their hands, it would somehow disappear like sand through their fingers. Everything I'm telling you is true. It's things that I've seen and lived with. They need Big Daddy. They need the IRS to put away money for them and give it to them in one big lump sum so they can take their family to their mountains for their summer vacation. That's poverty thinking. Poverty thinking. Let's talk about assets. What is an asset? Is that the next one? Yes. An asset to someone with a poverty mentality is, oh, an asset? It's anything I can buy. My car is an asset. My house is an asset. The wealthy person, to him, an asset is anything that produces income. Now, it's possible that if you're an Uber driver, it could be an asset. But if it's, you know, but if it's not, you're not an Uber driver, it's an expense. It's not an investment. Now you say, well, I do need a car in order to get to work. Okay, but how many of us buy a car or buy a house so that it meets the minimum standards of getting us from one place to another? Or a house? No, we buy it for other reasons. Because if we bought it just to get from one place to another, a used car that just makes do, that fulfills the function will do. But any of us who can afford to up that will do it simply because we buy cars and houses for many more reasons than utilitarian reasons. And because we do that, we cannot have the money to put in our freedom bucket. The wealthy mentality knows that without accumulating assets that produce income, he will never be free. And so he makes that one of the foremost goals in his life. A house can be an asset, and some person can say, well, okay, I'm using my house to live on now. It's not an asset, but one day I'm going to sell it. I'm going to downsize, and then I'm going to use that money from downsizing to get unearned income. And that's the money that I'm going to use to find my leisure. That's the money I'm going to use to retire. That's the money I'm going to use to have freedom. I buy that. I buy that. But to other people I've met, virtually no one has that in mind when they buy a house or when they trade in that house to buy an even bigger house. The last thing on their mind is how they're going to trade it in later on in life in order to make unearned income so that they can be free. But that is to say that you can have something that's both an expense and an asset, depending on how you use it at different times of your life. Let's go to the next one, retirement. By the way, I want to say that I don't expect everyone to agree with what I'm saying. Um, that's okay. Hope you still love me and I love you. But I think we need to be shaken up. We need to be shaken up. And you can always go back to thinking and doing what you've always done, and that's okay. But if even a few of you decide to change your perspective, that's worth everything. The poverty mentality for retirement is very simple. Retirement is when I stop working. End of it. That's it. Retirement, no work. Now, some of them fool themselves and say, well, I'm retired, and then they go and get a part-time job. They're really not retired, but you get the point. For the wealthy mentality, they don't understand retirement. A wealthy man, a wealthy woman doesn't think in terms of retirement. The concept has no meaning for them. They're not looking forward to a day when they don't work. That's not the way they think, you know. And you can talk to anybody with great wealth, and you'll never hear them saying, "Oh, I can't wait to retire." It's an unknown concept to them. They understand it, but it's just not for them. Retirement to the poor man means rest. It means a time of pleasure, a time of going to play golf, endless vacations. But to the wealthy mentality, they know that endless vacations, endless golf is like constantly having dessert. If you're a little kid, you might want to have dessert every day. But if you're a grown up, you know that the value of dessert is because it's a change of pace from nutritious food. If you had it all the time, it wouldn't be dessert anymore. It would be disgusting. And that is the poverty mentality for someone who can't wait to stop working so they can spend their time hanging out at the donut shop with their friends or talking about their muscle cars or whatever. These are the people that lack significance. These are the people that die early because they worked all their life just to stop working, and they find out that golf or ice cream every day doesn't cut it. Let's go on to the next one. Risk. Um, Risk is a poor word. It's not that we don't know what it means. It's just that in terms of financial planning, risk has so much fear attached to it that it's just so not helpful. The concept is misused. It's always used in terms of losing money. Oh, the investment is too risky. That job is too risky. Risk, as Pastor Derek was saying 2 weeks ago, there's so much an emotional concept attached to money that when you think of losing it and you think of risk, all you think of in terms of is losing money. But a wealthy man, a wealthy perspective, knows that A, risk is the wrong word. Okay. The better word is volatility. The market goes up, the market goes down. It's not just a one-way street. The better concept is let's compare what one risk to another. The greatest risk that the poor man faces is not the fear, is not losing money. It's losing the purchasing power of money, the risk of inflation. You might keep on to your dollar bill and shove it in your hands and stick it in your pocket, put it underneath your bed. But in 10 years, that dollar bill is going to buy 50 cents worth of money. So if you're happy to say, I still got my dollar bill, you're deluded. Because if it only buys 50 cents worth, somebody cut it in half, but they didn't use a scissor. So inflation risk is a real risk. And a wealthy man wants to do something about it. What about opportunity risk? What could you have done with that money? Opportunity risk is the money you could have made had you done something else with it. So many banks will go to mortgage holders and say, we got a great idea. Why don't you pay an extra, name it, $500 a month to your mortgage? Do you know that you can save 5 years off your mortgage and you're able to save $15,000 in interest payments? Really? Oh, I want to do that. And the banks will love you. Or, hey, how about instead of paying every month, pay every 2 weeks? Just by doing that, but pay the same money. But just by paying every 2 weeks, you'll take this much off your mortgage, this much off your interest. The banks love that. And they just want to take your money, rake it in so they can turn it around and lend it to someone else and give them the same story. Here's what they'll never tell you, that if you did not accelerate your mortgage, and you could afford to put that extra $1,000 somewhere. Had you thrown it anywhere in the stock market, you would have made 2 to 3 times what you would have saved with your mortgage. They're never going to tell you that. And even if you were going to make more money because you had such a high interest mortgage, at the very least, you should do the comparison. At the very least, that is a great example of opportunity loss. It's not always what you'll lose because you want into an investment. It's what you could have made because you didn't. And a wealthy man weighs everything. It's what time stole from you because of inflation. So you still have your same little checking account, but now everything costs so much more. But by golly, you didn't take a risk. That's poor mentality. And you have to balance all those things. Let's go to the next one. Education. This is something near and dear to me. I don't know if I'm talking about your parents. I think it's true for many immigrants because we came with so much nothing. We never had a chance to go to college. We were a projection of our egos for our parents, and they lived to get us college degrees. They lived through us. So their goal was to make sure that their kid or their grandkid was a college graduate. So education to the poor mentality became a status symbol. I got a college degree. My son the lawyer, my son the doctor, my son the master's in science. To the wealthy mentality, they don't care about the titles. They don't care about 4 year, 6 year, 8 year doctors. They don't care about all that. Education is a tool. It's one tool. It's a tool. That's what it is. It's a tool that can help you from going from earned income to unearned income, from making money by putting your time and your effort, and from making money without time and effort. If education can help you in that, it's a tool. If it can't, it has no value monetarily. It might have great value in artistry. It might have great value in making you feel good, but that's not what the subject is about. The subject is about financial security. And if education is not a tool, you might pound your chest. You might go on all the stripes you have and all the degrees you have. But unless you want to be a thermometer, it has no financial interest because it's a tool with along with other tools. One of the things I've learned in the sales world that every sales manager wants all the salesmen underneath him to spend every bit of their commission. And every time their income goes up, they want these salesmen to raise their lifestyles because they want them hungry. They want them hungry to meet their sales goals. Always hungry, always looking for the next commission, the higher payout, so that they can take bigger vacations, get bigger cars, send their kids to better colleges, better houses. To me, whether you buy a plain old rope and hang yourself, or whether you can afford a golden rope to hang yourself, if you're going to be raising your lifestyle every time you have the money to do it, you just made a decision to buy a golden rope, but you're still going to get hung. And you made that decision. Let's go to the next one. The poverty mentality, because he's got that patriarchal big daddy thing, leaves most of the planning to whoever he calls big daddy, the corporation, the company, the school district, the pension system, the government. I've heard it so much. Oh, I don't need to plan. I got a pension. My wife's got a pension. We're getting Social Securities. We're spending our money now. Okay. Maybe you're one of those lucky ones that isn't that kind of system, but you have given that choice over to a big father over you. The wealthy mentality says no one plans but me. I plan for myself. No corporation, no business, no government, no IRS, no pension system plans for me. I plan it. I'm responsible for it. No one tells me if I can retire and when. Once again, I don't want to anyone who's my age or younger to feel bad. That's not the point. But wouldn't you like your children to at least know that that's a choice? Let's go on to the next one. Pleasure. Self-control is one of the fruit of the spirit. The wealthy man who didn't inherit money, but who had the wealthy mentality, always had self-control. Some 25 years ago, I was driving in a car. We happened to go to New Jersey, and I was with a bunch of other financial salesmen like myself, stuffed into a car. And I just was talking and said, I read an article, and there's a great correlation between monogamy and people who succeed in the financial planning industry. They almost stopped the car and threw me out. What do you mean, Nick? I said, well, it's not my study, but the study shows if you're married and faithful to one person, there's a correlation that you'll have very high success in the financial planning business. But if you're not, and you're single, and you go through life with many partners, the correlation is the reverse. The chances are quite small that you'll succeed. And they said it was because the character traits that it takes to be faithful, to be monogamous, the deferral of your pleasure, your ability to cooperate, your ability to compromise, your ability to structure and order your life, but most importantly, the ability to defer your pleasures are the same characteristics that it takes to succeed in this job. Not to quit at 12 o'clock on Friday because happy hours at 3 and you have to get ready and you've got to go woman chasing. And my point is that after 25 years, every single person that I started with drummed out and failed. And the only ones that were left are those who stayed faithful in their marriage relationship because those same traits are what they used to become successful. So a wealthy mentality always says, first I pay the freedom bucket, then I worry about paying the pleasure bucket. Self-control. And lastly, purpose. I once, when I was a young man, newly married, maybe 23, I became a writer for this silly magazine. And one of the first things I wrote about was how having significance in your life, how it affects your longevity. And they did studies and found out that people who had a reason to get up in the morning ended up living 15 years longer than people who didn't. I was astounded. I didn't stay long at that job because the publisher was a charlatan. But I've never forgotten my first article. I have now dealt with thousands of clients, most of whom are educators, all of whom get told by Big Daddy that if they're 55 and have their 30 years or 62 or whatever their silly pension system is, they can put themselves out to farm. Some of them can't wait come September not to have to wake up at 5:30 to go to school. Until 1 month, 2 months, 3 months rolls around and all their friends have a purpose to get up. And they found out that reading the newspaper at 11 o'clock in the morning, having your cup of coffee with your bagel day after day after day, and waiting to see what third-rate comedian is at the community center just doesn't cut it. Many of them go back to work. The ones who don't end up dying early. They've lost their significance. So I tell these people, how much time have you spent financially preparing for your retirement? And they'll say, how long have I known you, Nick? 20 years, 10 years, 15 years? I said, how much time have you spent figuring out what you're going to do after you retire to give yourself a reason to get up? And I got no answers. No answers. So I formed two diagnostic questions. I said, you need to ask yourself these questions. And you start asking yourself these questions 5 years before you let yourself out to farm, because it takes that long to get ready. These are the questions. What do you love to do so much that you would do it for nothing? I've asked so many people, and some of them are so silly, and they'll say, golf. And they don't mean it, because if they went to golf night and day, they would die. The second question is, what do you love to do so much that you are willing to pay someone else in order to do it? If you don't know, I tell them, you need to ask God. When you find out what that is, you better start preparing for it, because the minute someone tells you, don't come back to work, if you don't have an answer to that, you're going to live very short, because you're going to take away a reason to get up. We all need significance in our lives. And the wealthy man, from the beginning, makes sure that he lives a life of significance. And for the Christian, because I'm speaking to Christians now, financial security is the ability to be free from the need to make an income so I can serve the Lord in whatever gift and capacity that He's given me. And the quicker I can get to that, the quicker I can fulfill my destiny. I found out later in life, I'm thankful to God that He's helped me make up time. I'm so thankful because now I'm free to help people wherever they are, whenever they are. And even though I long for people to contribute to that effort, if nobody does, I'm still going to do it because I can, because I have that choice. And I want everyone, especially the young, don't get fooled into poor man thinking mentality, chasing the degree, thinking that that's all there is. Don't get fooled into getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend, getting married, getting engaged, getting a house, getting a bigger house, saving for the wedding, saving for the bigger house for the kid. I have 20 grandchildren and 6 kids. That's not it at all. I'm not against them. But if you don't make your freedom bucket important, you're just going to be a very intelligent slave. Is there another? Yes. This is the priority of the wealthy Christian mentality. Pay the Lord. He's giving you everything. You get a bargain when you only give him back 10%. Pay him. I think that Christians are not even held to that 10%. They should give more. Then, then, isn't it funny? Before you worry about your house, pay your freedom bucket. Even before your food, yes, eat less. Pay your freedom bucket. Pay your freedom bucket if you can't buy a house. Rent a house. Pay your freedom bucket until you can afford a house. If you don't like what I'm saying, you want to make it number three, you want to make it number five after your utilities, fine, but don't make it last. You'll just doom yourself to slavery because you'll never have the opportunity to say no to other people. You'll never have the opportunity to choose who you want to relate to. I will never tell someone to stop working. I never intend to stop working, but I wish everyone would work because that's what they want to do, as opposed to what that's what they have to do, because that is wealth mentality. So I'll open it up. I don't want to talk about investments, this, that, and the other thing. That's for another time, another place. That's not what this talk is about. So, Derek, if you're still there and you'll help me, if anyone has a question,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
here.
you can sign on in and I will try to answer you.
My first question is, you don't have an answer for it. Where were you 30 years ago, Nick Cava?
I didn't get the question.
It was good. Nick, I believe she said, "Where were you 30 years ago?"
I was a poor thinking jerk.
Yeah.
How's that for Brooklyn talk? I thank God that somewhere 15 or 20 years ago, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It is the most important book. I had a poor dad. My cousins had rich dads. They owned businesses. My father was a proud man who sent his sons to school. I love my father, but he had also a poor dad, and the most he could do is switch countries. I bless him for that, but he still had a poor mentality.
Hey, Nick, I do have a question. Maybe it could help. What's the best way to get started? I mean, with the idea that filling up your freedom bucket when you already are in a system or pattern of spending, I think that transitioning to a new system of saving or spending differently might come as a shock to the system. So, what would your advice
That's
be?
a great question. I left that out purposely, but I will go through it quickly. The first thing is to believe in planning, okay? You have to believe in planning. The plan has to be written. And if you're married, you both need to sign on to the plan. Okay, that's the first thing. So the plan is to calculate how much in today's money you need to be free. And then to work with someone like me, by the way, I don't mean me, okay? Someone like me who will help you determine, okay, what your monthly budget is to live your lifestyle. And you might have two, like one a little lavish and one a little less lavish. So you'll have two different. And I just make up a number in order to live the way we want to live. We need $5,000 a month. Okay. So what you're saying is, if there was $5,000 a month coming in today without me going to work, I, in effect, would be financially free. That's what you're saying. Okay. And then you decide, not Uncle Sam, not your boss, when would I like to reach that financial freedom? Now, this is why it's for young. Let's say you're 25 and your boss says you get your pension at 62 and you don't like that. You want to be financially free at age 40. a number. A simple calculator, not yours, but mine, will let you know how much you need to put in your freedom bucket in order to accomplish that, and how fast it has to grow year by year in order to accomplish that. And you'll get a number. Nick, in order to do that, for you to retire in 15 years and live the same lifestyle you live today, you need to put away $1,500 a month until you're age 40. And Nick says, I can't do that. That only leaves me with $3,500 now. That means we can't pay the mortgage. We get kicked out on the street. And the financial planner kicks back and says, okay, maybe you can't do the 1,500, but you could cut out this, that, and the other thing. Instead of taking 2 vacations a year, take one. Instead of going to Europe, go to the Catskills. I don't know. He basically saying, how serious are you? And you come up with a number. Okay, 1,500 is too much, but we can do 900. Okay, you can do 900. You either have to get more growth for your money or you have to retire at 45. But it's a plan. It's a plan. Who does that? Nobody. My clients do that. Who does that? And you get it wrong? Fix it. But it's better than having no plan. That's how you start.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Anyone else want to do a follow-up question here?
All you older people, go tell your young people this information. If you want to do them a favor, you get them Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and if they don't like paper, get them Kindle, get them something that they can plug in their ears, and tell them you're going to ask them questions on it. Because other than the Bible, they should be reading this because it's about freedom and serving the Lord. Freedom.
Hey, Nick, I have a question from Jaden on the chat. He says, what are common mistakes that are made by those seeking financial freedom?
The inability to defer their pleasure. The inability to swallow the lies that the world tells them about how things ought, the oughts in life. The inability for them to stop following the Joneses because so-and-so spent $60,000 on their wedding, and so do you. And the inability to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, there's nothing to adjust. And if you don't have a plan, you will surely hit it.
That's good. You can type in your question if you are not able to come online or turn on your microphone for whatever reason. But I've been looking at the chats as well. Is there anyone else that can chime in here with a question? Our goal is not to hold you as long as we can. It is to just go right to the material. Oh, there's a freedom bucket. Angela has just come up with a freedom bucket on her screen, if you guys can see it.
Yeah, amen.
She's
Pay your,
ready to go.
pay yourself second. Pay the Lord.
Hmm.
Pay yourself second. And I don't mean your clothing shopping bucket
So great.
or your vacation bucket, your freedom bucket.
Uh, this, I do think that the calculator is very important. I think I want to clarify something that Nick already said. I'm just going to reassure that this is not an attempt to gain your business with what Nick does. In fact, what Nick does is his help for helping people to budget. I know Paul does the same thing. Um, Paul does it through an aspect that's really unique. He knows that marriages are bombarded with three main issues of why marriages fail. One of those components is finances. And so Paul has sat down with multiple marriages over the years and went through their budget to try to budget things out in order to help the marriage. It's interesting that budgeting can help a marriage. So, one of the things that if you're going through something, you're going through a hard time, consider that if finances are tight, what would it look like in your marriage if finances became clear? How much would that help you in the process? I really think that there's something to it. So, someone like Paul, someone like Nick, who offer themselves here in our church, our pastors, can sit down with us, care for our soul, and also caringly walk us through a very emotional thing, a very difficult thing, and help us to gain financial freedom. And yes, I do hear the difference in his tone when it comes to having information that if you're older for that next generation. But I'm blessed to have young teenagers here in this room or young adults in their
Yes.
20s here in this room. You guys have done an awesome job just learning about the mindset of wealth and generational wealth, which is something we could talk about another time. But could you imagine if you were to apply, like, you don't have to ask that question that Donna just asked, where were you 30 years ago? You have a great opportunity to start now. So, good on you. Now, I do have a question that just came in. Um, would you say a plan is only a good plan if you can calculate it? A financial plan.
Absolutely. A plan has to be specific, but it has to be adjustable. You must calculate it. You need a goal. You need a way of saying, I have to put X in my freedom bucket for this many months and this many years in this specific investment in order for me to reach the goal of financial security. And I want to say again, that doesn't mean you stop working, but the reason why you work changes. I'm still working. I don't need to. Okay. I'm not asking anyone to stop working, but I pray that your reason, your have, I pray that your have to becomes your want to.
This is a great question, especially for our younger folks here. Actually, anyone. Can you have a freedom bucket when you are severely in debt? Some people work from paycheck to paycheck, and freedom buckets don't seem realistic at the moment.
Okay, that's an excellent question because I don't want you to think that I'm the magic man. Uh, we deal with people in debt all the time, so I'm going to answer you the way, we have software. Once again, I'm looking for clients. We have software that will accelerate you getting out of your debt, or at least make it more efficient. If your problem is that you are never going to earn more money than your basic living expenses are, then you will go bankrupt. Okay? Because we don't fight gravity, we work with it. So if your problem is that you're fighting gravity, you're going to lose. On the other hand, another pair of eyes looking at your debt and looking at how you got there uh, may may be helpful. And in your case, your freedom bucket will start in the negative. And your first thing you do with your freedom bucket is getting out of debt, of course. When our money was taken away from fraud, I had the IRS chasing me 15 years ago. We had a negative net worth. Our first job was to go from a negative net worth in debt. And I owed the IRS with their stupid penalties for no fault that was my own because my so-called partner was a thief. But be that as it may, I didn't have a freedom bucket. That freedom bucket was pay the IRS and get out of debt. So, so the first thing is to get advice, and whoever you are, I can sit down with you for half an hour to an hour. It may be you're trying your best, but it may be if you do this, this, and this, it will help you accelerate, get out of debt. And then don't stop then. The money you use to get out of debt, you pay your freedom bucket.
Amen. Numbers don't lie, but part of the things that get me excited about being a Christian is that the numbers we have in our faith also don't always add up to our favor. I believe that there is a blessing portion to all of this, but this is not my time. It's yours. I
Yeah,
do have
and I
another.
do want to say, which I won't,
Yeah.
uh, uh, we lent to the Lord 20 years ago. We remortgaged our house in order to help our ministry. It was crazy. We felt it was the Lord.
Hmm.
I can easily tell you the Lord has paid me back 1,000%, and it's still not stopping. And if some of you want to hear that in detail, I'll tell you in ugly detail just how faithful he has been to us.
No.
Okay, somebody else.
Hey, I got a question from Amanda. Amanda, as a young adult, what do you feel like one should be prioritizing as an asset?
When you're talking about the type of investment, uh, so I'll give you a principle. The more knowledgeable you are in a specific investment, the more specific you can be. Some people either don't have the time or the expertise. If you have expertise in oil drilling and you have this know how to use this wonderful tool like radar that can look through the ground and it exists so they can tell you where you can find oil, you might want to raise $1 million just to drill one hole so you could make $100 million because you have very technical expertise. But if you don't have that expertise, you might just want to do what anyone can do. Just throw your money into an index in the stock market and it will make you extremely wealthy. And the risk to it will be virtually zero. And there's anything in between. There's something for everyone, depending on the time you have and the level of expertise. You don't all have to become crypto fans.
Mhm. So again, I think that some of these questions, if there's follow-up, they could ask you later and continue the dialogue. But Thomas asks for Rosemary, on behalf of Rosemary, you said not to put any extra money to pay off your mortgage. Where do you invest the extra money?
Okay, that's called arbitrage. Okay, so I said that and then I took it back. If you have a mortgage, which I told all my clients, because all my clients, especially immigrants like my dad and I inherited too, we love the bricks. We don't want anyone taking the bricks away from us. So the whole idea of getting rid of the mortgage and paying off your house is
Mm,
like so important to us. God forbid the bank comes and takes away our house, you know. It's so emotional and it's almost always wrong. Okay? Uh, Money is an asset like any other asset. If you could buy bananas at 50 cents, why would you want to buy them at 75 cents if they're the same bananas? Money is the same way. So if your mortgage is, if you have a mortgage at 3% and that 3% is deductible, so maybe it's only 2.5%, why would you want to get rid of that when you can take that same amount of money, throw it in the Standard and Poor's index, which averages 10 to 11% every year?
mm,
Why would you want to do that? But on the other hand, if your mortgage is 7% or 8%, you're not going to find an investment that after taxes will guarantee you 7 or 8%. Pay off your mortgage
mm.
because I'm not going to take your money. Because if you come to me and say, well, instead of paying off my mortgage, can you guarantee me that I'll make 8% on this money? I say, no, pay off your mortgage.
All right. Well, I think that this is an hour and a half. We had an hour of presentation.
That's good. But my espresso is calling me, folks. My
That
my blood is brown.
Uh, well, I think that as people of faith, we should pray. If you're here, you're curious about the information, or you're at a place where you might really need some guidance. And I think that some of you are here for both. So, being that the case, I think that there comes a place where we should pray over you as well, believing God that this is a good starting point to what God wants to do in setting you free financially. Nick, would you lead us in a prayer and bless the
Sure.
people who are here, please?
Uh,
Bless me too. I'll take it.
yes. I feel a tug in my heart that some of us older folks might have regrets, and I know that because I do. So the first thing I want to say is accept your regrets and take this information, but don't live in your regrets. Pass it on to the next generation. There's nothing other than the knowledge of Jesus Christ that you can give to the next generation than the knowledge of these principles. They are biblical, they are godly principles. So don't wallow in your regret as much as I feel it with you. I sympathize with you, but rather look at the fact that now you have the ability to bequeath wisdom to your children that will set them free. And for you younger people, just praise the Lord that you have been given one of the keys to freedom. Don't let them pass it by. Pursue it. As Solomon says, take the wisdom, treat it as valuable, value it, and pursue it. And Lord, I just thank you that you put it on Derek to talk about money, to talk about the motive, the emotional money, and that you made it possible, Lord God, to complete this in very practical ways. So God bless you guys, and thanks for the opportunity.